Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we have a special one. I've downloaded every single ESPN recruiting class dating back to 2006, which is when they started reporting it, or at least those are the latest ones they still have on file. And I'm comparing which draft classes have the most players make it to the NFL, which states do all these different top recruits come from, which states have the most players make the NFL based on population, which conferences are sending the most kids to the NFL, most athletes to the NFL, etc., etc. So yeah, as you can see, this tab has just all the player rankings, just the raw data from ESPN that I copied over. And again, it goes back to 2006, like Myron Rolle, Percy Harvin, Matt Stafford, DeMarco Murray, Taylor Mays, legendary hard-hitting safety from USC. If you know, you know. And then all the way up to 2021. So yeah, let's get right into it. Here I have a player ranking summary tab, and this is just tracking all of the players drafted by draft class. And so 2018 is a little bit lower due to the fact that many of the players are still in college. 2018's ESPN 300 class was like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, that group. So a lot of them are still in college. Obviously, like the top kids are already in the NFL, but many of them are still in college. So if you guys just want to quickly take a look, here you go. And then again, starting in 2013 was when ESPN switched over to 300 from 150, hence why 2012 all the way back to 2006 look different. And so yeah, it's just a summary. If you're a top 300 player, excluding 2018, because again, many of these people are still in college. If you're a top 300 player, then you have a 22.87% chance to get drafted, right? And then, and then the percent of players that get to come from the percent of drafted players that come from the ESPN Top 300 is 27%. And then on average, there are 69 players per top 300 that get drafted. Like, so many of these players that don't get drafted still go on to make the NFL or practice squads. But this 69 number is just the average of top 300 players to be drafted in any given year. And then I also broke it down by first 3 rounds. So if you're a top 300 player, you stand a 12.5% chance of getting drafted in the top first 3 rounds, which averages to 38. There's roughly 38 players from the top 300 that get drafted in the first 3 rounds every year. And then I also broke it down by top 150 to include more historical data as well. And so if you're a top 150 player, you have a 16% chance of getting drafted in the first 3 rounds. So if you're one of those upper echelon top half players, so top 150, so top half of 300, you stand a little bit better of a chance of getting drafted than if you are from the 150 to 300 mark, which I guess sort of like is not a huge difference, but it sort of shows it's a bit more accurate, the ranking system, the recruiting system based on where you're ranked. So yeah, and then I also included the data if you're including 2018, which I think is a bit silly to do, just because again, a lot of these players still haven't been drafted. But I'll just go ahead and leave this here so you can take a look at it. I really find a lot of this information quite interesting. Again, if you are in the top 300, on average, 69 players will get drafted, and you have a 23% chance of being drafted. And so now let's look at which year stood out the most. So 2016 had 76 players drafted total, and 41 in the first 3 rounds, which was tied with 2017. So it looks like our 2016 class was our strongest class we've ever had, and it almost looks like slightly more accurate over the years, maybe not enough of a trend, but let's look at some of the top players in the 2016 class, just to refresh our memories. 2016 was the Rashawn Gary, Nick Bosa, Levante Taylor, Isaac Nada. So maybe not quite as many like massive names when obviously due to the fact there's no, like, as you can see, there's no QB here, but a lot more like solid players that ended up getting drafted. Oh, Jacob Eason, go Dogs. Um, so yeah, feel free to just look through this on your own as well on the ESPN website, but there's some really interesting insights I think I was able to find. And so I was also curious about what states do these players come from. So I took every single year, right? Every single year in every single state, and summed up the total number of all ESPN 300 players based on what state they're from by year, and then I put that all into a into a little summary chart over here. Also, the 3 players from Canada, and then it's really weird, but ESPN includes District of Columbia, so just know that that's sort of, they count as like its own like region and stuff. And so here I have a high school summary. So the highest recruited states, Florida. Again, this is all years dating back to 2006 to 2021. Florida had the had the most players drafted with 651, and then we go into Texas, Georgia. Georgia has more than California. That's a little bit surprising by 2. Georgia's my home state, so I love to see that. Louisiana, Alabama, North Carolina, Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania. And so then I wanted to see, like, okay, obviously, like, Texas, Florida will have the most. I mean, their populations are huge. They're huge for college football. But I want to see which state has the most based on its population. And so even though I took the recruits from 2006 to now, I didn't do, like, a moving population growth chart. I just took, to keep it simple, I just took the population now. Then I did it on a per 100,000 basis. This is straight from Wikipedia, by the way, per 100,000 basis. And then I divided the recruits by like the total number of recruits on a per 100,000 basis. So that way I could tell which states, send the most, produce the most talent based on their population. And Georgia was actually first, and honestly by not by an overly significant margin, but it's crazy because Georgia's first. And then if I go down to like Oklahoma, who's 10th, Oklahoma's not quite, but Georgia's nearly 3 times more likely to produce a ESPN 300 recruit than Oklahoma, based on a per 100,000 population, which is kind of nuts to me. So really goes to show just how dominant Georgia is at high school football. Georgia 3.57 per 100,000, then District of Columbia. Again, it's sort of a weird thing, but that's just how like ESPN will say the person's from District of Columbia, not like the state. Not the state they're from, so a little bit odd. And this will obviously be higher just because I feel like it's a city. I mean, anytime you have like a huge city, it'll be a higher number of recruits than compared to like more rural areas, just on like a net everything basis. So yeah, then we have Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, surprisingly 7th, and as you can see, no sign of California. So Texas was 2nd in just total raw number of recruits, but end up getting 7th when you actually look at it based on their population, and are pretty far back from, you'd say, the top states. I mean, it's a pretty big drop off from Mississippi and Alabama to Texas, and not even half of what Georgia is. So Louisiana had quite a few players. No California too, which I was a little bit surprised about. Again, Georgia barely edging out California, even when you look at it in the overall recruits. Even though Georgia's population is 10 million, and California's is more than 3.5 times the population of Georgia. So pretty interesting there. And so then and here's just all the draft picks. Again, just a lot of these numbers I'm coming up with are just based on VLOOKUP. So some of these tabs will just be like raw data. As you can see, I literally just copied over every single draft pick dating back to mid 2000s. just for VLOOKUP purposes. And then yeah, let's go to the draft summary. So here I compare, okay, which conferences are having the most players drafted by year, and yeah, so I was just really curious on that. And so this first column here is the first 3 rounds, and then the second column is the overall is the total number drafted all 7 rounds, right? So I was really curious of which conference produced the most top talent. So top 3 rounds, I'd say it's sort of the top talent of the draft, and it's the first 2 days, because I always do first round, and then they do second and third round is one day, and then 3 to 7 I believe is just all lumped together. Or sorry, 4 to 7 is all lumped together. So that's sort of how I labeled the first 3 rounds as the quote unquote top talent. I did the exact same thing with my I did the exact same thing with the player ranking summary tab to see which one produced the most top talent. And so to keep it consistent, I did the same thing when I'm comparing conferences and the total number of players drafted by conference. So I'll just go to the summary tab here. Here's some charts to look at. So first 3 rounds for all years from 2008, because again, I started in 2008 because the players that were in the top 300 in 2006 would be getting drafted in 2008. And then I went through 2021 just because that's the most recent. Here's the summary tab. The Pac-12 191, Big Ten 211, SEC 336, Big 12 124, ACC 189. That's first 3 rounds. And then as you can see, all around 713 for the SEC. So the SEC had the most in the first 3 rounds and all rounds. And what's pretty crazy is you can almost add up for the first 3 rounds. It really goes to show you the level of talent the SEC produces, because you can add up like 2 of the conferences and it will be equal or less than what the SEC is. As you can see, if we were to add up the Big 12 and the Big 10 having the second most players drafted in the first 3 rounds, that'd be equal to 335, which is 1 less than the SEC. So that's pretty nuts. And then so for the highest individual years, so last year the SEC had the most players drafted of any conference from any year dating back to 2008. They had 65 players drafted. And in 2020, for most players drafted first 3 rounds, is the SEC with 39. And there was never a single year where the SEC was out drafted by another conference. I think there was one year where maybe they tied, or maybe someone tied with them for the first 3 rounds. But as far as overall players drafted, there's never a year where someone like dethroned the SEC, which is pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, as you can see, the Big Ten got close in 2012, but close but no cigar. And then again, here's the summary tab, and as you can see, here's first 3 rounds, and here's all rounds, and then here's just a little chart showing you everything you need to know about players drafted by conference. And so yeah, that's the main summary. Oh, one other interesting thing I saw was, like I was saying, so Georgia had the most players get drafted Georgia had the most players get drafted based on our state rankings that we had, the highest recruited states. The most players make it to the ESPN 300. But they ended up not having the most players drafted. And I just did a quick analysis of that, looking at every year they had, and they ended up having around 18 to 20% of players from the ESPN 300 get drafted, which is lower than the overall average, which was around that 23%. So it's pretty interesting that they have the highest percentage of talent, percentage of population become an ESPN top 300 talent, but then of players that end up going on to get drafted, they're below the overall average of 23%, and they're coming in at around 18%. So that was a little bit frustrating to see, having Georgia be my home state. But yeah, anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, share with your friends. I did this all in one take, so if anything was confusing, I'd be more than happy to break it down in the comments. Feel free to shoot me any questions you have. If you'd like me to share this sheet with you so you can mess around with it and, come with your own findings, feel free to message me. And one quick disclaimer. So when I was copying over from ESPN versus Wikipedia, the way they do their, like if the name is like a junior, the way they do like their periods will be like slightly different. So sometimes the VLOOKUP would mess up. So this list isn't like 100% accurate, just because there's a little bit of inconsistencies based on if someone has a period in their name. But again, those inconsistencies are there in every year, so it's not like it skews one year more than another. So please keep that in mind. I'd like manually change some people. Like I knew AJ Green was drafted, and he has periods in his name, but I couldn't do that for every single player. So please keep that in mind that this is like a 98% accurate list, not a 100% accurate list. But yeah, this video took a lot of time and effort, and came up with some really cool insights. Yeah, in summary, Georgia has the best high school football players based on a per 100,000 basis. The SEC's by far dominant in sending kids to the NFL, as we can see in this chart and table here. And then as far as which draft year had which recruiting class was the strongest, it was easily 2016 with 76 players drafted of 300. And again, the average was 22.87. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe. Please share with your friends, and let me know your thoughts on the video. Thanks so much. Bye.